The night my daughter got married, I was sitting alone in my living room in Clarksville, Tennessee, eating reheated chicken and watching the 10 o'clock news. Not because I forgot, not because I was out of town, not because I had some kind of emergency at work. I wasn't there because my wife told me I'd make it awkward, because she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Gerald, just let Nora have her day." And because Nora, my own daughter, the little girl I taught to ride a bike in the parking lot of Piggly Wiggly on Providence Boulevard, agreed with her. So I stayed home. And at 10:14 that night, my phone started blowing up, because someone in that reception hall had pulled out their phone and recorded the groom, a man named Tyler Ashton Briggs, grabbing my daughter by the wrist in front of 200 people, and then, when she tried to pull away, slapping her across the face so hard her tiara hit the floor. The video was already on 3 different news stations by the time my neighbor knocked on my door to ask if I'd seen it. My name is Gerald Pruitt. I'm 54 years old. I spent 26 years as a detective with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office before I retired 2 years ago. I've worked homicides, domestics, child abuse cases. I've sat across from people who did terrible things and kept my face completely neutral. That night, watching that video on my phone, I couldn't keep my face neutral. And what happened next, what I did, what Nora did, what Pamela did, and what Tyler Ashton Briggs didn't count on, that's the story I need to tell you. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Now let's get into the story. Let me go back to the beginning, because you can't understand that night without understanding the 6 months that led up to it. Nora is my only child. Her mother, Pamela, and I have been married for 31 years. We live in a house on Crossland Avenue, 3 blocks from the elementary school where Nora used to walk home alone because she was the kind of kid who needed that independence. She's always been stubborn in that specific way, where it comes from confidence, not defiance. She gets it from me. Pamela will tell you she gets it from her, but Pamela is wrong about that one. Nora met Tyler Briggs at a corporate networking event in Nashville about 2.5 years ago. She was working in marketing for a healthcare company downtown. Tyler was in commercial real estate. He wore a sport coat over a Henley and told her he grew up in Franklin, which to certain people in Middle Tennessee is the equivalent of saying you come from old money without actually saying it. I met Tyler for the first time at a dinner Nora organized at Mafiosa's on Division Street, the kind of restaurant where the noise level is just high enough that you can't quite hear everything someone says, and you have to lean in, which means you spend the whole meal slightly off balance. Maybe that was coincidence, maybe it wasn't. I don't know yet. What I do know is that Tyler spent most of dinner talking about himself and asking me questions in a way that felt less like interest and more like reconnaissance. He wanted to know what cases I'd worked on. He wanted to know if I was still connected to law enforcement. He asked twice whether I kept in touch with people at the department. I'm a retired detective. When someone asks me the same question twice in one dinner, I notice. I told Pamela that night, on the drive home on I-24, that something about Tyler didn't sit right with me. She told me I was being a cop instead of a father, that I looked at everyone like a suspect, that Nora was happy, and wasn't that what mattered? I let it go. I let it go because she wasn't entirely wrong. I do look at people that way. 26 years of that work changes your instincts in ways that aren't always fair to civilians. I tried to give Tyler the benefit of the doubt. I went to Nora's apartment for Sunday dinners when he was there. I watched the game with him. I noticed the way he interrupted Nora when she was telling a story. Not aggressively, just consistently. The way someone does when they've decided your words aren't as important as theirs. I noticed that he never asked Nora's opinion about anything in front of me, but that whenever I asked her a question directly, she'd glance at him before answering. But she was happy. Or she seemed happy. And what are you supposed to do with that? They got engaged last December. Tyler proposed at the rooftop of the Thompson Hotel in Nashville, had a photographer there, the whole setup. Nora called me from the parking garage afterward, still crying the good kind of tears, and I told her I was happy for her because I was trying to be. The wedding planning started immediately. Pamela threw herself into it. She and Nora started meeting twice a week at the dining room table with binders and fabric swatches and printed menus from caterers. I'd come home from my afternoon walk and there'd be cake samples on the kitchen counter and centerpiece options spread across the living room floor. I was included in the broad strokes. The venue, a restored plantation-era estate called Glenstone Hall out near Gallatin, about 40 minutes northeast of Nashville. The date, the second Saturday in October. The guest count, somewhere around 200. What I was not included in was anything that actually mattered. The first sign came in February. Nora called Pamela to say that Tyler's family wanted the ceremony to be a certain way. Traditional, she said, which turned out to mean Tyler's stepfather would walk him in, his mother would give a reading, and the receiving line would be on the groom's side of the family first. Fine. Weddings involve compromise. I understood that. The second sign came in April. I was having lunch with Nora at Puckett's in downtown Franklin, just the two of us, which had become a rarer thing since Tyler came into the picture. I asked her how things were going with the planning. She said everything was great. Then she went quiet for a second, looked down at her sweet tea and said, "Daddy, Tyler thinks it would be better if you didn't give a toast." I put my fork down. Not because of the toast itself. I don't need to give speeches. I'm not that guy. But because of the way she said it, like she'd been rehearsing it, like it was something she'd been carrying for a while before she could say it to my face. "Tyler thinks," I said. "What do you think?" "I think," she said carefully, "that you and Tyler are still getting to know each other, and a toast might put you both in a weird spot." That was not an answer to my question. I'm a detective. I know the difference between an answer and a deflection. But she was looking at me with that expression. Not scared exactly, more like braced, like she was waiting to see if I'd make it harder for her. And I made a decision in that moment. I let it go. The third sign came in July. Pamela sat me down in the kitchen on a Tuesday evening. She had that look she gets when she's decided something and wants me to agree with it. The look that says the decision is already made, and this is really just a formality. She poured us both coffee even though it was 7 in the evening and neither of us needed coffee, and then she told me that Nora and Tyler had talked it over and they thought it would be best if I didn't attend the wedding. I'm going to say that again because I want you to understand that I heard it correctly the first time. My own daughter's wedding. Pamela said Tyler's family was large and close-knit and had very specific ideas about the event, and that my presence, specifically my history as a law enforcement officer, the fact that Tyler's older brother had some kind of past legal issue I wasn't supposed to know about, and my protective energy, which was Pamela's phrase, not Nora's, would make things tense. She said Nora had cried when she asked her about it. She said Nora didn't want me to not be there, but that Tyler had made it clear it was important to him. And Nora agreed, I said. Pamela looked at her coffee. She wants the day to go smoothly, Gerald. I sat with that for a long time. I thought about calling Nora. I started to dial her number about 5 times over the following week, but every time I got close, I thought about her face at that lunch in Franklin. Braced, waiting, hoping I wouldn't make it harder, and I put the phone down. I told myself it was just one day. I told myself that if I pushed back, I was proving Tyler right about me. I told myself that the most important thing was Nora's long-term happiness, and if I turned this into a battle, I might win the day and lose my daughter. I told Pamela I wouldn't go, and for the next 3 months, I watched from the outside as my wife helped plan a wedding I wasn't invited to. The Saturday in October was clear and cold, the kind of Tennessee autumn day where the sky is that sharp, almost painful blue, and the maples on the back roads near Gallatin had gone the color of fire. I know this because I drove part of the way out there that morning without deciding to. I ended up on Long Hollow Pike with no particular destination, and I had to turn myself around and come back home. I spent the day doing things that had no meaning. I mowed the lawn, which didn't need mowing. I reorganized the garage. I ate a sandwich standing over the kitchen sink because I didn't want to sit at the table and feel the emptiness of the house. Pamela was at Glenstone Hall from 9 in the morning. She texted me a photo of Nora in her dress right before the ceremony. Nora looked beautiful. She was smiling the kind of smile that takes effort. I've spent 26 years learning to tell the difference between a real smile and a performance, and I looked at that photo for a long time. The ceremony was at 4. The reception started at 6. By 8 o'clock, I was back on the couch with the television on and my phone face down on the cushion beside me, because I didn't want to watch for updates and I couldn't stop myself from watching for updates, and the only compromise I could manage was to not be able to see the screen light up. At 10:14 p.m., the screen lit up. Not Pamela, not Nora. My former partner from the department, a guy named Ray Benton, who now works cold cases out of the Hendersonville office. Ray's text said, "Gerald, Channel 5, right now." I picked up the remote. The footage was already playing. Someone had uploaded it to Twitter at 9:47, and by the time it hit the local news stations, it had been viewed something like 80,000 times. The caption on the graphic beneath the anchor's face read, "Violent incident at Gallatin wedding reception. Groom under investigation." The video was shot on a phone, landscape orientation, slightly shaky because whoever was filming it had started recording in a hurry. You could see the reception hall of Glenstone Hall, the tall windows, the string lights, the round tables with their white linens. You could see the dance floor in the middle, and you could see my daughter. Nora was standing near the edge of the dance floor in her wedding dress. She was talking to Tyler. Or rather, Tyler was talking at her. His body language was wrong from the very first frame. Weight forward, chin down, the posture of someone who has already decided how this ends. Even without sound. And there was sound. People talking in the background, music from somewhere. I could read what was happening the way you read a crime scene. Before anything happened, I already knew something was about to. Nora put her hand on his arm. He grabbed her wrist. She pulled back, and for just a moment, she looked the way Nora has never looked in her entire life. Small and uncertain and afraid. And then his right hand came up and he slapped her. Not a push, not a shove. He slapped her across the face. The sound on the video cut through everything else. That sharp crack, and then 200 people going silent all at once, which is its own kind of sound. Her tiara fell. She put her hand to her face. He stood there for exactly 2 seconds. You could count them. And then his expression shifted into something I recognized. Damage control. He reached for her and she stepped back. That's where the video ended. I was standing in the middle of my living room. I don't remember getting up. My phone rang. It was Pamela. "Gerald." Her voice was the way it gets when she's trying not to fall apart. "I need you to come." I was in my truck and on Old Hickory Boulevard inside of 4 minutes. The drive to Gallatin on a Saturday night takes about 45 minutes. I made it in 32. I know the speed limits on those roads because I spent years enforcing them, and I want to be honest with you. I didn't observe a single one of them. Pamela met me in the parking lot of Glenstone Hall. She was still in her mother-of-the-bride dress, a navy blue thing she'd bought at Dillard's in Green Hills. Her mascara had come down. There were people still milling around outside. Guests who didn't know whether to leave or stay. A couple of Tyler's groomsmen standing near the garden wall with their jackets off. "Where is she?" I said. "Inside, the bridal suite. Gerald, she doesn't—" Pamela stopped herself. "She needs you." "Where is he?" "His brothers took him out the back. There's already a police cruiser out front." 2 Sumner County deputies were at the main entrance. I showed one of them my retired credentials and my name, and he'd already been told I was coming because Pamela had called ahead. I went inside. The reception hall had that particular quality of a party that ended wrong. Half-eaten plates still on tables, glasses with lipstick on the rims, centerpieces in various states of disarray. The DJ equipment was being quietly packed up in the corner. I walked past all of it like it was a scene, which is what it was. Nora was in the bridal suite with 3 of her bridesmaids and Pamela's sister, my sister-in-law Diane. When I walked through the door, the bridesmaids gave me that look. The look of young women who've been trying to handle something too big for them and are desperate for an adult to walk in. Nora was sitting in a chair in front of the vanity mirror, still in her dress. Her tiara was on the counter beside her, one side of the comb slightly bent from where it had fallen. There was redness along her left cheekbone. She'd been crying, but she wasn't crying now. She was past that. She was in the flat, quiet place that comes after. She looked at me in the mirror. "Hi, Daddy," she said. And something broke loose in my chest that I am not going to describe further, because I am a 54-year-old retired police detective, and there are limits to what I'll say out loud about that moment. I walked over and put my hands on her shoulders, and I looked at her in that mirror. "Tell me what you need," I said. She took a breath. Then she said, "I need you to help me figure out what to do." That I could do. That is something I have spent my entire professional life doing for other people, and now I was going to do it for my daughter. Here's what I knew from 26 years of working domestic violence cases. The next 72 hours matter more than almost anything else. What a victim does in the immediate aftermath of a violent incident, whether they speak to law enforcement, whether they receive medical attention, whether they have documentation of their injuries, whether they have legal counsel, shapes everything that comes after. Not because the law requires it to happen that way, but because the people who do harm understand that time is on their side if the victim hesitates. Tyler's family had money. His stepfather, Randall Briggs, was a commercial developer out of Brentwood who had the kind of network that included lawyers, city council members, and people who returned favors. I had seen what that kind of network could do to a case. I'd seen it neutralize witnesses, slow down investigations, and turn a clear situation murky through sheer patience and resources. Tyler had also, apparently, not counted on one thing: 200 witnesses. And one of them had kept filming. The video that hit Twitter at 9:47 was shot by a woman named, and I only know this because she came forward voluntarily to law enforcement the next day, a college friend of Nora's named Brittany Warfield, who had flown in from Atlanta for the wedding. Brittany had started filming because she thought she was catching a funny moment between the bride and groom. Some kind of playful argument, she said. The kind that makes for funny wedding content. She realized within about 4 seconds that it was not that. She almost deleted it. She told investigators later that she sat in her car in the parking lot of Glenstone Hall for 45 minutes trying to decide what to do. She called 2 friends. She prayed, she said, and then she posted it because she couldn't live with herself if she didn't, and because she thought about what she'd want someone to do if she were Nora. Brittany Warfield saved my daughter's case. I want to say that clearly so it doesn't get lost in the rest of this story. That night, in the bridal suite, I told Nora 3 things. First, do not go anywhere with Tyler tonight. Do not go to the hotel suite they'd booked. Do not go home with him. Do not get in a car with him. Diane was going to take her to her own house in Hendersonville, and Pamela would be there, and I would be right behind them. Second, the Sumner County deputies outside needed to take a statement from her tonight, while the redness on her face was still visible, and while her memory of the sequence of events was fresh. I would be with her the entire time. She didn't have to say anything she didn't want to say, but she needed to say something. Third, I was going to call an attorney in the morning. Not a divorce attorney yet, not necessarily, but someone in her corner before Tyler's people got their version of events established. Nora listened to all 3. Then she said, "Mom told me you'd make things complicated." "I know," I said. "She was trying to protect the day," Nora said. "She wasn't trying to hurt you." "I know that too. I should have fought harder to have you there." Her voice was completely level, the way voices get when someone has already done the crying. I knew something was off. I've known for a long time. I just kept telling myself it would be different once we were married, that the pressure would go away and he'd go back to being the person I met. I didn't say what I was thinking. I didn't say that this was a pattern I had seen so many times it had its own name in the literature, that the escalation to physical violence in public, at a wedding reception in front of 200 people, was not an aberration but a statement. A man so certain of his own control that he'd stopped managing his behavior, even in settings where management was clearly called for. I didn't say any of that. I just said, "You don't have to figure all of that out tonight." She nodded once. "Okay," she said. "Let's go talk to the deputies." I'm going to tell you what happened with Tyler Briggs, but first I want to stay with Nora for a moment, because she's the person this story is actually about, and I don't want her to become just a supporting character in the account of what happened to her. Nora Eleanor Pruitt, now, again, just Nora Pruitt, is 29 years old. She grew up in Clarksville, Tennessee. She played club soccer through high school and was exactly good enough to know she wasn't good enough for a college scholarship, which she took with a maturity I found remarkable in a 17-year-old. She studied communications at MTSU in Murfreesboro, graduated in 4 years, moved to Nashville at 22 and built a career entirely on her own. I have never once co-signed a loan for her, never once covered her rent, never once gotten her a job through any kind of connection. That was her choice and her achievement. She is, without question, the best thing I have been any part of creating. The night of her wedding, she sat across from 2 Sumner County Sheriff's deputies in a small room off the main hall of Glenstone Hall, and she gave them a clear, chronological, emotionally controlled account of what had happened. She described the argument that had preceded it. Tyler had been drinking. There had been tension about something involving the seating arrangement and his mother. They'd stepped to the edge of the dance floor because she wanted to resolve it quietly. She described the physical contact in precise terms. She did not minimize it, and she did not dramatize it. One of the deputies was young, maybe mid-20s, and at one point he asked her, "Ma'am, is this the first time something like this has happened?" Nora looked at the deputy for a moment. Then she said, "No." And that single word, spoken quietly in a bridal suite in Gallatin, Tennessee, became the foundation of everything that followed. Tyler Ashton Briggs was arrested that night. Sumner County deputies located him at a Days Inn off Highway 31E in Gallatin, where he'd checked in at 11:30 p.m. The charge was domestic assault. Because it had occurred in public, with multiple witnesses and video documentation, the district attorney's office in Gallatin moved quickly. His stepfather, Randall Briggs, hired a criminal defense attorney from Nashville within 18 hours. The attorney was good. Former prosecutor, well regarded, the kind of hire that tells you the family understood the seriousness of the situation. He issued a statement saying Tyler deeply regretted the incident, that it was an isolated moment of stress in an otherwise difficult week, and that the couple were working through this privately. The couple were not working through anything privately. Nora had retained her own attorney, a woman named Susan Kellner at a firm in downtown Nashville that specializes in family law, who came recommended by a former colleague of mine who handles victim advocacy. Susan is quiet and precise and absolutely unmovable, and she and Nora spoke for 2 hours the morning after the wedding, while Nora was still at Diane's house in Hendersonville, in the clothes Diane had lent her, because she had left Glenstone Hall in her wedding dress and nothing else. The criminal case moved through the system over the next 4 months. Tyler's attorney made several attempts to negotiate, arguing mitigating circumstances, arguing first offense, arguing that the video didn't capture the full context of the interaction. The DA's office countered with Nora's statement, Brittany Warfield's footage, the testimony of 11 other witnesses who had been in the reception hall, and, eventually, evidence that Nora gave Susan Kellner from the preceding 18 months. Photographs, texts, a journal Nora had kept on a notes app on her phone that she'd started in February, 8 months before the wedding, after an incident in the kitchen of their apartment in East Nashville that she'd told no one about at the time. In May of this year, Tyler Ashton Briggs pled guilty to domestic assault in Sumner County Criminal Court. He received a suspended sentence, mandatory counseling, and a 2-year restraining order. His attorney characterized it as an appropriate resolution. The DA characterized it as a first step. The divorce was finalized last month. Nora got the apartment. It was in her name. And she didn't want anything from Tyler, which Susan advised against, and Nora did anyway, because what she wanted was a clean line. I want to tell you about the conversation I had with Pamela. Not the one in the parking lot of Glenstone Hall, where neither of us had the bandwidth for anything other than logistics. The real one, about 3 weeks later, at the kitchen table on Crossland Avenue with the coffee that neither of us was drinking, because it was 11 at night and we both know better. Pamela is not a bad person. I want to be clear about that. She is a person who wanted her daughter's wedding day to be good, and who believed that the way to make it good was to manage the variables she could control, and who was wrong about which variables actually mattered. She sat across from me and she said, I should have pushed back on Tyler months before the wedding. I saw things. I made excuses for them. I asked her what she saw. She told me. Some of it I'd noticed. Some of it I hadn't. The way he spoke to Nora when he thought other people weren't listening. The way Nora's posture changed when he walked into a room. A moment at Easter dinner when Tyler said something about Nora's career that wasn't quite an insult, but wasn't quite not one either, and how Nora had laughed it off with an expertise that scared Pamela a little, but that she told herself meant Nora was handling it. I thought, Pamela said, that if I just kept things smooth, it would work itself out. That Nora would figure it out on her own. That fighting about it would just push her closer to him. I've heard that reasoning before. I've heard it from mothers at kitchen tables exactly like this one, in cases that didn't end the way ours ended. You were trying to protect her, I said. So was I when I stepped back. We were both wrong about the best way to do it. Pamela looked at me. She called me the morning after, she said, before she called the attorney. She said, Mom, Daddy came to Glenstone Hall as fast as I've ever seen anyone move. Pamela stopped. She said, I want to be the kind of person who moves like that for the people I love. I don't have anything to add to that. I think that says everything. It's been 7 months since the wedding. Nora is still in the apartment in East Nashville, the one on Shelby Avenue near 5 Points. She went back to work about 10 days after the wedding. She said the routine helped. And her company, to their credit, handled the situation with real discretion and kept the press at bay when a couple of entertainment news outlets started circling around the story in the weeks after the video went viral. She's in therapy. She talks about it plainly, without either shame or performance, the way she talks about most things. She goes on Tuesdays. She says it helps. I drive up to Nashville about twice a month. We go to lunch. We went to a Predators game in January, which she initiated, which tells me something. We talk on the phone most Sunday evenings, which we hadn't done since she was in college. She asked me once, about 2 months after everything, whether I was angry that I hadn't been at the wedding. I thought about that for a minute. I'm angry, I said, that you were in a situation where it felt like the only way to keep peace was to leave me out of it. That's what Tyler created. That's what he does, or what he did. He made himself the thing everyone else had to manage around, and that meant good people made choices they wouldn't otherwise have made. Are you angry at me? She asked. No, I said, and I meant it. You were doing the best you knew how with the information you had. So was your mother. So was I when I agreed to stay home. None of us are the story here. Tyler is the story. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, I keep thinking about what would have happened if Brittany hadn't filmed it. I've thought about that too. More than I want to admit. The answer is, I don't know. That's the honest answer. Maybe nothing would have changed immediately. Maybe the control Tyler had built up over 18 months would have continued. Maybe Nora would have found her way out eventually, on her own timeline. Or maybe it would have gotten worse. In my experience, it usually does. But Brittany did film it, and 200 people saw it in real time. And someone knocked on my door that night and asked if I'd seen the news. And I was 40 minutes away, and I made it in 32. That's the part I hold on to. Not the months I spent on the outside. Not the things I could have done differently. Not the conversation I should have had with Tyler Briggs the night I met him at that restaurant on Division Street. When something in his voice made my detective's instincts pull up short, and I told myself I was being unfair. I hold on to 32 minutes on Old Hickory Boulevard, and my daughter's face in that mirror, and the fact that when she needed me, I was there. I'm Gerald Pruitt. I'm a retired detective. I'm a father. And I am here to tell you that the people who love you, the ones who show up at 10:30 at night when everything falls apart, are worth more than any single day. Even the day someone told you you'd make awkward.